What's up, everyone? It's a knife side here, and today I'm going to be doing my full review on the Spyderco Manix 2 lightweight, and this is the version in SPY27 blade steel with their new kind of color. I think it's a tealish color of FRN. So this is a knife that I picked up after I got my Manix 2 in G10. So yeah, kind of a spoiler alert, but this is going to be a positive review just because I like the Manix 2 in G10. So I was like, I bet I would like the lightweight because I'm not opposed to FRN, and so I picked it up. And that's one mistake I kind of want to correct from my first impressions video. I was saying FRN all the time in that video, and this is actually FRCP, which stands for fiberglass reinforced copolymer, and I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be stronger than FRN. Someone corrected me in the comments on that, so thank you for doing that. And I did some research, and that was straight off of Spyderco's website. So I'm probably going to refer to it as FRN throughout this video just because I don't really feel like saying FRCP, and I will probably forget, but yeah, just know that if I say this knife is an FRN, I mean FRCP. So let's talk about the anatomy of this knife. So like I already said, SPY27 blade, their new color of FRCP. Yeah, I gotta correct myself on that. It's got the plastic cage. It's running on the ball lock. It is left hand, right hand friendly. So I guess this is completely ambidextrous. It is made in the Golden, Colorado factory in America, and it will run you about $140, I think it's $145. So talking a little bit more about the looks, I actually really like the color of this. I don't really have much to compare it to. I don't know why I opened the knives to do this, but here is the blue on my K390 Dragonfly. And then here is the blue on my ProTech SBR. So yeah, it's overall a good color. I mean, I don't really care that much about the color of my knives, other than I just don't want it to be an ugly color. And yeah, this one looks really good. Also, the satin blade looks pretty clean on SPY27. Sometimes I feel like with the higher carbide steels that Spyderco uses, kind of like maybe their S110V or their K390, it almost looks like a kind of a coarser belt that they finish it on. I don't know if it's because of the higher quality steel, but yeah, the satin finish on this looks really clean, pretty good. There are some hairline scratches that have kind of formed on this knife just from use. I'm gonna try and get these to show up. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that. I can see them in my lighting here, but I just don't know if they're gonna be able to show up on camera. So it's not that bad of scratches, but sorry, that's too high. But they are definitely there. I do prefer the stonewash finish for those reasons, but I do like to see scratches on my knives. But I understand that people wouldn't want to see scratches on every single knife that they own. And yeah, that's about it for the looks. One thing that is kind of weird is that they did the black, what would you call that? The black lock, the plastic piece that goes around the ball for the ball lock, and not kind of like silver color to match the hardware. I'm not sure why, but it doesn't throw off the aesthetics of it. Let me touch on the blade now. So SPY27. Oh wait, actually before I do that, I am all over the place today, but size comparisons, here's the PM2. And then what else can I show? The Native 5. And then I'll do the Gale Bradley 2. And then the Benchmade Griptilian. I feel like the Griptilian and the Manix are pretty similar knives. I mean, I feel like they're both kind of in the same range, trying to do the same thing. I probably like the Manix more, but yeah, they're both great knives. And so for the blade, SPY27 blade steel, what are my thoughts about it? So I have a little bit of like mixed feelings about this. Overall, as a functional, useful steel, if this knife, if it was not labeled, I would like the steel and it would be perfectly fine for me. And I've had decent results with edge retention and edge stability. The edge, if you're curious, was burnt from the factory, but I've sharpened it a few times, so I've kind of gotten rid of that. But overall, the steel has performed very well for me. Sharpening, it has been great. It has deburred very well. Completely deburred off my Corset stone. Right now, I'm running a 600 grit edge on this. I once again don't know if this is going to show up, but I have really enjoyed using this with a toothier edge. I feel like it could also run a polished edge very well, which I did run a polished edge on here, and I don't really like a mirror polish edge on my knives all that much. I just prefer a toothier edge, and so I kind of just use a 600 grit edge on this, but I do feel like that it has sharpened up very well, deburred nicely, came out very crispy off my stones, and so yeah, I've really enjoyed using and sharpening this steel. Now, where do the negatives come in? So my negatives with SPY27 is that this steel, it's not really doing anything special. It is very, very similar, or it feels pretty much the same to me as, S30V 154cm, and just like those steels in that kind of range. And I knew that going into buying this knife, so I'm not trying to act like, oh yeah, I expected this to be K390's little brother or something. But no, I expected that it was going to be like that just because I'd watched other YouTube videos on testing for SPY27, but it's also like, I feel like it was more of a marketing thing from Spyderco than like, an improvement to things in the knife world. This steel it's good, it's functional, it's effective, and I really enjoy it, but it's not like breaking down any barriers. It's not really doing anything special. And so I guess that even though I like the steel, I shouldn't complain about it very much. It just seems like Spyderco did this more as a branding and marketing of it, and not as just kind of like to improve the knife steel world a little bit. But one thing that I want to give them credit on is, like I said, this deburred very well and came out very nice off my stones. And that is kind of impressive, at least to me, or I mean, it shouldn't, or basically what I'm trying to say is with these newer steels, when a company develops them, it's not just like some dude mixing up all the elements in a metal and then coming up with a new name. It's not as easy as that. Getting down the heat treatment, I don't want to act like I know more than I do because I've never made a knife before, but I do know that it's pretty difficult, or at least you have to do some testing and a lot of work to get that heat treatment down. As we see with Chris Reeve, they are coming out with their knives in S45VN, and they've done S35VN for many years, but it's been hyped up for a really long time, and a bunch of people are wondering, okay, why isn't it out yet? And I don't know this for certain, but I assume that it's because they're still testing the heat treatment, and it's not like they're just holding on to all their S45VN blades, trying to get a bunch of hype off a drop or something. So I feel like that I do deserve to give Spyderco some credit because it is a well heat treated steel, and it's not just like as you see with Artisan cutlery in their AR RPM 9, there have been issues with the heat treatment on those. And so that seems like all kind of a marketing thing and not really attention to the actual performance of the steel, while this one, there is still attention to the performance. And at the end of the day, it's a well-performing steel. My main issue is that it's not really doing anything special. Let me talk a little bit more about the blade shape and the cutting geometry of this. So it's about 20 thousandths behind the edge, just like your average Golden Colorado Spyderco. And I would like that to be thinner. The reason I'm not complaining about it more is because I've bought so many Spydercos, more than the Spyderco. I definitely have more of their knives than any other knives in my collection. I think I have 10 of them. But what I know, or when I go to buy a Spyderco, I tell myself, all right, this is probably going to be 20 thousandths behind the edge, gonna have an grind. It could be on center, could be off center. The fit and finish, I shouldn't expect it to be amazing, but yeah, I tell myself that before I buy a Spyderco, and so that's why it might seem like in my reviews I'm not as critical as I normally would be of another knife, just because I expected it going into buying the knife, and I know that, okay, yeah, that's fulfilling my expectations. So I would like this to be thinner, like 10 to 15 thousandths behind the edge, but it's not. And something I want to address with knives are thicker behind the edge, which 20 thousandths, a lot of people would consider that to be decent for everyday carry. And personally for me, I enjoy to sharpen my knives. I strop and sharpen my knives all the time, so I like to keep them really sharp, sharper than I really need them. But so I don't really need it to be super thin behind the edge, because an advantage to a knife that's thin behind the edge is it will still pass through materials very well, even when it's pretty much dull. And so I don't need every knife to be super thin behind the edge, but I sure would like it to be. So one more thing, the last thing I want to talk about with this blade is the blade shape of it. So this is a very good blade shape and really better than I thought it was going to be. So as you can see, the tip on this, it's a decently low tip. You don't have to raise your wrist up much to do a utility cut. It's pretty much just like that, as you can see right there. But one thing that I want to point out is there is a little bit of belly right through here. I feel like that would probably get flattened out over time with more sharpenings, but the reason that I really like that is because I do a lot of cardboard cutting. So a lot of times I take the cardboard and put it towards the base right here and then push through like that. And I've just kind of gotten a habit of doing that. So what that belly does is it catches the cardboard a little bit, and really I don't notice like a huge difference from a normal just flat edged knife, but I do feel like it gives me a little bit more cutting power and just a little, or it makes the cardboard a little bit easier to cut. So I really like that about this blade shape, and that's kind of the same thing with the Insingo blade. Let me pull out my Sabenza here. As you can see with this Insingo blade, it's flat up here and then belly back here, and it does the same thing with cardboard. It helps pass through those materials easier. Let me touch on, okay, the next part I'm going to talk about is the fit and finish. So the fit and finish on this knife, it's around what I expected. So it's not completely centered, it's off center. That grind might be a little bit off. Let me try and show that on the camera. So also the back spacer here, you know, it's not the best looking thing in the world. I feel like if you're a GEC collector, you probably look at this and you're like, oh no, I can't deal with that. It's not the prettiest looking thing in the world, but you know, it's not really any functional error. It's just not the best looking. For blade play and lock rock, there is a little, I can wiggle out some side to side if, you know, I hold it up here and hold it down there, but I can do that with almost every knife that I have, unless it's just over tightened or maybe it has external stops or something. But so that doesn't really bother me all that much. You know, some perfectionists it might, but you know, if you're just doing it like this, you're not really gonna feel much blade play. So also lock rock, no lock rock. I want to talk about this lock a little bit because it's turned out to be one of my favorite locking mechanisms that I have. And before I talk about this, I don't want to seem like I am some hard user that needs my knife to hold 500 pounds off the, like 500 pounds of weight off of the blade. I just feel like that's a little silly because I use this thing to cut cardboard and tape, but I feel like this locking mechanism really, I don't know, I do really like knives, and it's very intriguing because it's very easy to operate, but also very strong. And sometimes it feels like that's a trade-off with a lot of locks, because, I mean, think about your back lock or your triad lock. These are very simple, but also very strong locking mechanisms. But, you know, they're not the easiest thing in the world to operate. I mean, you can do most of them one-handed, but sometimes you'll have to use a second hand. And then you have some locks, kind of like an axis lock. This is very strong, but you do have the chance of the omega springs breaking, but it's also very easy to operate. So I feel like this locking mechanism, it's pretty much just like an axis lock without the issues of the omega springs breaking. So there's really nothing wrong with this lock, in my opinion. It's one of my favorite locks for the reasons that I'm saying. It's very strong. I think it's cool to just watch because, as you can see, you have a, let me get my flashlight out for this. You have like the back of the blade is just kind of a 90-degree flat spot, and then this little spot right here is just kind of like a stop bar. And what that is going to do is that is basically just going to hit that bar, and that is practically the stop pin that keeps it from going that way. I think this part is a little bit cooler though. So there's kind of another tang for this, as you can see it right in that gap right there. Hopefully that's showing up. And what it does is when you see that little opening, that bar slides through right there. So that's keeping it from going this way, and that's keeping it, or the stop bar is keeping it from going that way. So it works like every other locking mechanism, or mostly every other locking mechanism. But I think it's really cool because it's easy to operate and it's also really strong. Some people don't like that it is plastic on there, and I feel like that's more of a complaint with the G10 Manix. But this one, the plastic, I feel like I'm not very picky when it comes to stuff like that. I can really pick knives apart, but I feel like when it comes to materials, I'm not one of those guys who's gonna stand here and say I hate FRN, because at the end of the day, it's a pretty good, or I mean, it's strong, it's durable, and I don't really have many complaints about it. Is that all I gotta say for the locking mechanism? Or no? Okay. One thing I want to point out is, like I said, this is a coil spring lock or locking mechanism, and so basically, instead of the omega springs like the axis lock, it has a coil spring in there. And my flashlight skills are really not the best right now because I'm trying to fit it on the camera, but I also trying to see it myself. And what that coil spring does is it basically just gets compressed when you push it in like that, so you can disengage it while it's pushing up on this locking mechanism into there, just basically making it a little bit stronger. So I really like this lock. I think it's really good. And yeah, I guess that's all I got to say about it. For the ergonomics of this, so here's where I talk about FRN or FRCP. I'm going to try and correct myself as much as I can. So the reason that I'm not against it is because it's lightweight, it's durable, and it has good texture to it. And that's really simple. I mean, if I just told you, oh yeah, there's a handle material out there that's lightweight, durable, and has good texture, you'd probably be like, awesome, that sounds good. And then I pull out this and you're like, nah, I hate FRN. And then it's like, why do you hate FRN? And you're like, because it's cheap. And I don't know. I just feel like that's one of my pet peeves in the knife world. I mean, people can like FRN or dislike FRN. I don't really care. People like what they like and dislike what they dislike. But I feel like a lot of times some major influencer out there will say something and then everyone just repeats it and takes it for a fact, when I think it's fun to think for yourself, and not that you're disagreeing with everything that everyone says, because then nobody likes you. But I do like FRN. I think it's a good handle material. And I think that it's a good handle material for users too, because a lot of times when you get a user knife, it seems like it's just like the hardcore strong ones are super heavy, like 5-6 ounces, but this one under 3 ounces. I feel like in the summertime, maybe if you're wearing lightweight clothes and you need a full-size knife, this could definitely be a good user. I guess I'm at the point in the knife world where I have so many knives, I'm classifying one as my summer user carry. But no, I feel like FRN's a good material, but I do have some complaints with these ergos. So one of them is the jimping right here. I just don't really think that it's that necessary. Also, the jimping back here, I'm not the biggest fan of. I don't really even like this jimping up here, but it's not really bad at all compared to these. These don't hurt my hand, but I don't really see the point of them. And honestly, when I'm in this choked up grip, I don't really feel it back here, and I don't really, only like my pinky is touching that, so I don't have any issues with that back there. But I just don't think it's that necessary, because if you look at these ergonomic lines, they are pretty specific. I mean, they have like a defined finger groove here, and then kind of almost a mustache looking thing, just designed right there. And so this thing is not going to come out of your hands. Like, you're not going to stab something and then your hand's going to run up on it. You're just not going to run into that issue with this knife. And so I feel like that the jimping really isn't that necessary, because I think jimping is, or like a little bit of texture is necessary on plastic handled knives, kind of like this little patch right here on the Griptilian. But I mean, they already have that with the bi-directional texturing, so I just don't really think that it is that important. And one more complaint I guess I could have with it is, as you can see here, it kind of inclines up and then dips down and then inclines back up again. And I do this silly ergonomics test where I basically take like 5 or 6 layers of cardboard and I just kind of push my knife through it and use pretty much all of the force that I have in my body. And usually I can't cut it unless the blade is really long. But it still is just kind of a test to see where the knife develops hot spots when you're using so much force on your cut. And I get one like right in here just because it inclines back up. And so this little dip right here, that's not really touching any part of my hand. And that little incline right there is digging in right around here. And so that's obviously not that big of a complaint, because in most of my cuts, I usually only cut like 2 or 3 layers of cardboard at the same time of a maximum. It's pretty much my max, and there's no hot spots when I do that. And so ergonomics, I really like them. I guess they are specific, as you can see here. I feel like I have smaller hands probably than the average person, or probably like medium-sized glove hands. I don't wear gloves that much, but that's what I would guess. And some people, and I feel like this is more of a big hand suited knife, but it feels great in my hand, so I have no issues with that. So I guess my conclusions for the Ergos is that I like them. I wish that this shimping wasn't here. The lines of it are kind of specific, but at the end of the day, they work good and they're comfortable for me. Let's talk about the carry now. So I feel like the carry for me, I have no issues, but you guys might have issues. So some people hate knives that are wide in their pocket, and it's gonna be kind of a weird comparisons, just because I don't know, it's just gonna be weird. Trust me, I guess. I'm just gonna try and measure at the widest point. I guess it would be kind of like right here. Okay, I'm looking at like 1.7 or about 1.8. I'll just round up to that. But 1.8 inches wide in the pocket, that is pretty wide. And so maybe if you have a cramped pocket, if you wear skinny jeans, no, that wouldn't be the issue. If your pockets are skinny this way, I guess you could say, like kind of like that, maybe that'll be an issue. But for me, I just carry a knife in my wallet in my front right pocket, and I don't have any issues reaching around this to grab my wallet. So I don't have any issues with that. And some people really don't like that this wire clip is not deep carry. Personally, for me, I am happy that it's not deep carry, just because I like a little bit to grab onto out of my pocket, and this is a full-size knife. So yeah, I like that about it. I wonder if you could switch it to a deep carry wire clip. I assume that you could. I mean, I don't really see why not, but I don't know if it will hit on that landing pad. Yeah, I doubt it will. So I know some people are going to hate that, but I don't really see the issue with it, and it carries fine for me. I don't really have any need to conceal my knives, so I guess, yeah, that's my opinion on it. Let's talk about the action a little bit. So the action, it's your regular kind of Spyderco action. It's good. I like it. It flicks out with my thumb. You can do the Spidey flick, the, what is it, Spidey drop thing. Actually, okay, that's one thing I want to address. The detent on this, okay, it's not a detent, but I'm going to call it a detent. Basically, just overcoming the spring tension on this knife is more difficult than I imagined. So, one thing with axis lock knives, or just this kind of style of lock, is it seems like they're very easy to open just because there's not a detent, and it's really just the spring tension of these omega springs that is resisting you from opening it. I mean, some people might put it like that and be like, wow, that's a snappy detent, but really it's not snappy at all. And a lot of times you can just, I'm doing this off camera, but I just opened up my Griptilian by shaking it out. And I could probably use this as a primary opening mechanism, just pulling it out of my pocket and opening it like that, just because it's really easy to do. Now, first, I want to say that I think that the shake test for your knives is kind of dumb. I mean, I've never had a knife open in my pocket from shaking it. I don't know. I mean, it's tucked into the seam of my pocket, so I don't think it'd be possible to even happen. But this one, I cannot shake it out. I'm shaking that thing as hard as I can off camera, and I really can't shake it out. And like you saw when I was trying to do the Spidey drop thing, okay, I kind of did it right there when I did it really hard. But yeah, that's a pretty strong tension to overcome. But one thing that I do like is because you're just fighting against the spring tension, so it's almost like a gradual resistance, I guess you could call it. Hope I'm not losing you guys here, but a lot of times with, you know, your standard liner lock or your frame lock, it's just kind of like a step with the detent ball, just because that detent ball coming loose from that detent hole, and that's how the blade opens. This one, you can still thumb roll it very easily, even though it's got the strong spring retention. So I really like that. It's a great action, simple, effective, and it's easy. I feel like that if you're a new person getting this knife, you might think that it feels cheap, and I probably would think the same thing. So maybe I'd suggest the regular Manix, just because this feels like a lot more of a, I guess, a more solid knife. But even though they're probably the same strength, I guess, I just feel like both of them are good knives. This one might feel a little bit cheap, but I've realized that I like FRN. I really like this knife, and so that doesn't really bother me at all. Sometimes with the action, if you first get a Manix 2 out of the box and you're like, man, my fingers are just hurting really bad, I can't close the thing, it's very annoying. What I did is I just set it like this overnight, just had the spring compressed in there and just left it sitting like that. What's that doing is that's pinching the coil spring together a little bit, causing it to basically just bend it and break it in a little bit more, and that has helped it over time. Sometimes, you know, just breaking in your knives, if you have free time watching TV or something, just open it and closing it a little bit. So yeah, that is, I guess, all I gotta say about the action. For the last category, the value of this knife. So like I said before, I think I said $145. What are my thoughts about that? I feel like, personally for me, this price point for Spyderco, I don't expect them to have great deals and great prices, but that's okay. I feel like it's really good. And if you're looking for SPY27, if you like this color, I think that's a great deal, and I would suggest picking up this knife. But I always kind of think about, when it comes to value, would I suggest this to a non-knife person? And the truth is, probably not. I very well could suggest the BD1N version of the Manix 2 Lightweight. I believe that is in the lower 100s for the price range. But yeah, I feel like that is a pretty good value, but I probably wouldn't suggest this to a newer person. But I do like the knife. I would suggest it. I think it's a good knife. Probably one of my favorite Spydercos. If I had to choose between the lightweight and the G10 version, I feel like I like the G10 version a little bit more, but the lightweight makes a little bit more sense for me, just because, you know, it's lighter weight and I don't care about the difference between FRN and G10 and no liners versus full steel liners. That doesn't really bother me all that much. This one does feel just like more of a solid knife, more of a normal knife than the full FRN one. So I don't want to make that decision right now. I'm thinking about doing a Spyderco video where I take all of my Spydercos, all 10 of them, and just rank them from worst to least, or in my opinion. And I think that will be a fun one. It's a video I've been wanting to do for a while now, and I guess that's gonna wrap it up. Let me just say my final conclusions on this knife. Overall, I really like it. I think it's good. SPY27, good blade steel. Just feel like it's more of a marketing thing than an improvement to the knife world. The ergonomics are comfortable. I am a fan of this FRCP. The locking mechanism is one of my favorites. It's lightweight, it carries pretty well, and I feel like the value is good for a knife nut, but maybe not the best for a new person in the knife world. So I guess that's my final conclusions. Thank you guys for watching. We're almost at that 1,000 subscriber mark. I've been working on things for an upcoming giveaway. Sorry that I haven't been posting as much recently. I honestly don't have an excuse for it other than just I haven't been posting. But that's going to do it for the video. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you guys in the next one.